The fourth quarter collapse, the 21-point meltdown. What was your biggest concern coming out of there? Obviously, a lot of attention paid what Caleb Williams didn't do and how the offense stalled after taking a lead and wasn't as productive as we had hoped. The defense, though, I think also problematic. What do you think was the bigger problem?
Yeah, three-phase collapse, David. It really was. And that's the most worrisome thing about the whole thing is your whole team fell apart at a time when you had a chance to close the door and seal a victory that would have really got the season started off on the right foot with the way you'd played for 3 quarters. Special teams, didn't even mention them. They missed a field goal to start the fourth quarter. They had a punt blocked. They couldn't get a kickoff out the back of the end zone. There's culpability there in the loss for the special teams. The defense, which had been fantastic for 3 quarters, gives up 3 consecutive touchdown drives in gotta-have-it moments. Can't happen. Offense, struggled, inconsistent, quarterback, erratic. You name it, David. It was all there. And so I think Ben Johnson probably hasn't slept much since Monday night trying to figure out how to get this cleaned up and what problems are immediately fixable and what stuff he's going to have to work around.
He was open about what he didn't know about Caleb Williams yesterday. I thought that was a fascinating answer, Dan, to the question Phil Thompson of the Tribune asked him about the streakiness when Caleb gets into the type of rut he got into on Monday night. And he said he's still getting to know the player. Is that acceptable to you? Because I think it's understandable, but I just don't think that I thought of it that way at the time.
David, I'll be honest with you. I'm not in for big week 2 overreactions, but I'm concerned about the click between Ben and Caleb as it relates to just being able to have the quarterback handle functional tasks that starting quarterbacks have to handle, right? Like it's huddle mechanics. It's being able to get to the line of scrimmage fast, which we've talked about for 3+ months. It's being able to have a reliable cadence so you don't have 4 first half false starts penalty. I asked Ben on Tuesday about the false starts. One of them occurred with DJ Moore in motion and the snap not timed up properly. 2 others on Jonah Jackson occurred with 2 other offensive linemen jumping with him. And so there's an issue there. And Ben has been very forthright in saying we're in a no excuses zone with that. Basically his answer yesterday was, we're going to have to rely on silent cadence. Obviously that's something you'll use in a loud environment like Ford Field. But if you're ever relying on silent cadence at home, you got big problems. And so, look, there's a lot of special in Caleb Williams' video for Monday night. And it's the type of stuff that says, like, there's no way you can give up on this talent prematurely. But then there's a lot of ugliness in the basic responsibilities and duties of a QB1 in this league that you've got to get cleaned up quickly. Otherwise, you walk yourself into the danger zone really, really fast with what you're expecting your football team to overcome.
We're talking with Dan Wiederer from The Athletic here on Mully and Haugh. Dan, when you look at the running game, it wasn't what they wanted it to be, especially when Caleb Williams leads your team in rushing, and all of those yards were on scrambles that he took off down the field, and he did it well, and he looked athletic and even faster than he did a year ago, but that's not by design. By design, how do you think they address that heading into Detroit against the Lions? Who is going to be the second running back that emerges as a guy that you trust getting maybe more than the 3 carries that DJ Moore had, but where's Kyle Monangai in all this?
Well, he's a rookie, first and foremost. He's a guy that's coming back after an extended absence with an injury, and so you're trying to figure out how much you can put on his plate. I think one of the areas that I'm interested to see how they evolve through September and then use that week 5 bye and kind of reinvent themselves is the running game. What do they want to be? How do they want it to look? And which way do they lean? I thought that the catastrophic third quarter drive started very promising with the way DeAndre Swift ran the football in a known running sort of scenario where he was getting his pads low and he was pushing piles and he was doing things that you want him to do. Now you just need that more regularly and more consistently to get that part of your game going, because if you can get that part of your game going, now play action becomes more dangerous and a bigger friend to the quarterback, and you can get rolling in that way. And so the running game, look, I've talked a lot here about the Bears having this month of September to kind of feel out who they are and who they aren't, then use the bye to make necessary tweaks, and then come out in October and show people what the necessary tweaks did. That's one area where I'm going to kind of have the magnifying glass trained just to figure out which direction they're going to head with things.
Dan, what do you think Ben Johnson learned about himself as a head coach Monday night?
Probably that there's a lot to handle. I thought he was honest on Tuesday and sort of owning up to a few of the things that he wishes he had done better, was self-critical of some of the play calling rhythm he had and the inability to adjust early when Brian Flores wasn't sending as much pressure and wasn't blitzing as much as they anticipated, and the Bears were a little slow to react to that. I think, obviously you've got a couple moments, the challenge, I think he learned that, okay, I've got to trust myself to trust the coaches upstairs that are giving me valid and reliable info. And I've got to lean on that, and I've got to own that when I'm wrong. And then obviously the Cairo Santos end of game kickoff situation is a tough one, because you've got a kicker that you want to trust, and you saw some things during the preseason that said, okay, like, we think his leg strength is good, we think his ability to get some power behind some kicks is good, and then you have two incidents, obviously the biggest one with the kickoff, and then a sliced field goal to start the fourth quarter, that erode a little bit of trust in your first game working with someone in big moments. And so there's a lot there for Ben to kind of get his arms around and understand that he's responsible for all of it now. And I think that's probably the biggest thing he learned.
You mentioned the kickoff at the end of the game when it should have been either out of the end zone, as Ben Johnson expected, or out of bounds, something different than what happened. Also, there was the big missed 50-yarder by Cairo Santos.
Yeah.
That you look around the league and guys are hitting that routinely. Do the Bears have a kicking issue?
Probably, hate to say it, because Cairo's been very, very reliable, very accurate as a kicker in a place that's very hard to kick at Soldier Field. But those are two big moments, right? For a football team that doesn't have a very big margin for error. And so now you've got to get your arms around how to get that corrected. And if it's just a basic, calculus of the leg strength is not there to get a football out of the back of the end zone in September, then you've got to feel that out. But if it was just a missed hit kick and you just live with the consequences, then you feel that out as well. I always use like when you go into your doctor, they don't always send you to the emergency room, but they give you 3 or 4 bullet points to say, hey, keep an eye on this. And I would put kicking on the keep an eye on this list here for the next month or so.
How difficult do you think it will be for Ben Johnson to harness his emotions that will be understandable and maybe evident Sunday walking into Ford Field?
Not difficult. Like, I think he'll process that in his own moment, but I think Ben is so intense and so laser focused. You can already hear it in the way he's answering questions about this week, that he just doesn't have a lot of time to, dabble in nostalgia. I think he'll probably spend a moment or two Sunday morning reflecting on some of the biggest moments that he's had in there. Obviously, he's going to have a lot of visitors when he's out on the field before the game, and people coming over to offer handshakes, players, coaches, etc. So you'll just kind of have to sift through that a little bit. But I think Ben understands the responsibilities of his post and takes them very seriously. And I think he's just going to be locked in on trying to get this team to 1-1, because look, like David, you and I both know that patience is required within this season, but patience is going to be harder to summon if the Bears are below 500 for the first 2 months of the season. And if you fall 2 games below 500, if you fall 3 games below 500, where the city is. Look, like, there were boos on Monday night in Ben Johnson's first game as Bears coach. And those boos, in my opinion, are related to 2 things. It's fear that the quarterback is not as good as everyone hoped he would be. And 2, fatigue of, like, we've done this too many times. It's not the losing, it's the brand of losing. And the brand of losing Monday was so familiar that it felt heavy. And so, like, that's part of this equation, is trying to figure out a way to change the tone on this, so the whole here we go again complex of Bears fans in Chicago doesn't create the vibe that your team is responding to.
When you talk about that list of things, Dan, that you got to keep an eye on, what else is on there? You named one, but there are a couple of other things that I think people would be pretty disturbed with.
I mean, Mully, the false start issues are incredibly bothersome to me, because, again, it's not a road game. It's not an environment that should challenge you in that regard. These are things that you should have been polishing up since May, and the quarterback's inability, again, with some of the operational command stuff, it's a huge concern, and like, you're not going to pick that up on an all 22 watch. You're not going to pick up. Yeah, like guys, they had an illegal shift on the second to last play of the game. Like, the game's probably over, but you come out of a change of possession knowing you're in desperation time, and I'm sure you've got 2 plays kind of queued up to try to get either in to Hail Mary range, or fingers crossed, maybe you get a long field goal. And your first snap of the final possession is an illegal shift that hits DJ Moore while he's in motion, and he's got to scoop it up and run out of bounds to stop the clock. And, like, that's procedural stuff that it's just unforgivable stuff that can't happen. And that kind of stuff was pervasive for 4 quarters the other night. And that's why you're hearing the level of concern here. This isn't an overreaction to a loss in week one. It's the sloppiness that can't be acceptable that occurred Monday night that gives you a little bit of pause.
One area the Bears might feel good about could be the defensive front. They created more pressure than I think people might have expected. Dio Odangbo was active. Montez Sweat was evident. You saw Gervon Dexter flash. Dan, when you look at this matchup against the Lions are introducing, I think, 3 new offensive line starters. Yep. Could that be an area where the Bears have an unexpected edge?
Well, you got to create that edge. And I thought for 3 quarters the other night, I thought Dennis Allen was calling a terrific game to take a quarterback making his first start out of rhythm and really disrupt him. It's a different puzzle against Jared Goff, who's been in this league for a decade, and you've got to figure out a way to make him uncomfortable. Watching that Lions-Packers game on Sunday afternoon, the 2 things that I noticed about the Lions offense were, number one, what you say, David, is just the offensive line did not look as sturdy as we're used to seeing it look, right? Like that whole engine of getting that offense off the ground wasn't there. And then they just never found a groove. And when we've been watching these fireworks shows from the Lions offense for the last couple of years, you watch that and their inability to get into the end zone until garbage time in the 4th quarter. You're like, this is not the Lions offense I'm used to seeing. And so the Bears need to try to feast on that defensively. You hope you get some of your starters in the secondary back. You hope you're able to create some of that pressure up front with the guys that you mentioned. And hopefully you can set a tone early that you're here for the full day, and you can get Jared Goff into check down mode, and you can, neutralize some of those big play guys that they have, because, certainly the Packers did it, and there's a little bit of an early season blueprint to follow.
Dan, I'm sure that you've already had a conversation between the defensive coordinator and the head coach about individual players. I know that he's not calling the plays. They're not running the same scheme, but they're the same talent level, and he'd have good information on that. What kind of knowledge do you anticipate him having of the defense and what they want to try to get done defensively, and how much of an advantage is having the former offensive coordinator of the Lions creating a game plan against the Lions?
Yeah, I think it would help you in both phases, right? Offense and defense. You should know tendencies, you should know strengths, you should know limitations of players that you're playing against, and you would imagine that gives you a little bit of a head start. Now, you don't want to take that too seriously and put too much stock into it, understanding that there's a whole new set of play callers in Detroit, and they've got different systems and things that they're going to kind of mix in that you've got to be able to respond to. But it's going to be fascinating to see that chess match on Sunday afternoon, and 2 teams that really, really need this game for different reasons. And you just, the urgency of this in week 2 for 2 teams that can't afford to not only start 0-2, but start 0-2 with 2 division losses is massive. And so that dynamic is certainly going to be in play as they try to figure out what they want to do to attack on Sunday.